Okay, so we are now on question 16 in our state and locates, which is asking us to look at movement 3, bars 53 to 94. So you need to find that on your score. 53 is the start of the trio, and 94 takes us, so it's from page 57, 58, 59 on to page 60, which is the final page of the trio, but it's not looking at the final section of the trio. It's stopping at the double bar line with the repeat marks. Okay, so we're going to move on to question A. Which section starts at bar 64, beat 3? So if you want to give that a go, find it in your score and have a look. If you want to hear me talk you through it, then stay listening. Okay, so I've marked in green and zoomed in on this bit of the score. Obviously, when you're identifying sections, you need to be looking at the whole piece as much as you can in order to pinpoint where you are. And as I said previously, when you're being asked to look at sections, ideally by the time you get to your exam, you will know where the sections are off by heart, either because you know the bar numbers or you've memorised sort of by sight what it looks like in the score. This section we've got a double bar line, and we know in our trio that we've had a section before that from bar 53 up until bar 64, and then it's taking over into a new section where we're meant to identify where we are. So on that principle, you should be able to establish that we're now in the B section. So we've had an A section to begin with, which is repeated. Now we're in a B section, which has also got repeat marks. So that one should be fairly easy, particularly as it is at a double bar point. And the trio, you know, in any symphony, the third movement, if it's a minuet and trio, it tends to be quite a short movement. And so it's easier to sort of identify the structural sections because you're not having to flick through endless pages to work out where you are. Okay, next question. So state in full the key at bar 88. So that's on page 59. So you can go and have a look at that if you would like yourself, or you can keep listening to me and I will talk you through it. This one really made me laugh because I found bar 88. I thought, oh, brilliant. It's got one note in it. It's got one note that's doubled across 3 instruments. How helpful. So because we've not been given a lot, that suggests that note is a you know, it's a really important one, obviously, and it should tell us all we need to know. Now, as I said to you before, when you're identifying the key anywhere, it's a good idea to look at the surrounding bars to help you. But I suppose you could get a question where you're identifying the key in one bar and it's in a passage where there is a quick rate of harmonic change and the key is actually modulating every bar. So looking at other bars isn't really going to help you. As we always do, we have to look at the key signature if we're trying to work out a key. So our key signature at this point has 2 flats. And you should be thinking of your circle of fifths and you should be thinking which key has 2 flats, a B flat and an E flat. And the answer to that is B flat. I sound like every word is rhyming. So we're either in B flat major, or we're in the relative minor to that, or if we've got any different accidentals, we could have modulated. So looking in our bar 88, hopefully you can see fairly obviously that we have one note here and it is an F sharp. Now, we've just talked about the fact that we're in a key with 2 flats. So we're on the left-hand side of the circle of fifths. We've not gained a flat or lost a flat by having a naturalised note. We've got sharps. And so your brain should immediately be thinking, right, a raised note that is raised to a sharp, well, that is a raised 7th in a minor key, a sharpened 7th. And so you should be thinking, okay, well, B flat major, what's the relative minor? Because I've not changed key signature, so it has to be the relative minor unless it's jumped from that into a different related minor key. But let's start with the relative minor. the relative minor of B flat major is G minor. So G minor has a B flat and an E flat, and it has a sharpened seventh because it's a minor key. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, F sharp. So based on what you've got there, which is just an F sharp, you have to deduce that you are in G minor, and that is the relative minor. You know, it's fine, it's plausible. The F sharp isn't moving to a G, but we haven't got any more information to go on, so G minor would be the correct answer. Okay, so we're now on question C, which is where we have our little table, and we have to find the following harmonic features. Now you will notice that I've actually changed the second feature that you need to find. I've changed the question from what it was originally. So what you've got printed out on your State+Locate cards is incorrect, and you need to change that. It did say a 5/7 chord in 4/2 position, and when I had a look at this and then looked at the answer, I realised that the person who made this had actually made a mistake, and it wasn't in 4/2 position, it was in 6/5. So I've kept the answer the same, the chord is the same, that needs to be analysed, but it's not in 4/2 position. The person that made these obviously is brilliant and has spent a huge amount of time on it, and she's just made a mistake. So you need to change that one. But anyway, we're not on that one yet, we're on the first one, which is find a second inversion 5/7 chord. So if you want to give that a go, you can, but bear with me, because the other thing I wanted to point out was the fact that the second feature you are required to find, even though now it's been changed, it's still the same thing, that it is also a 5/7 chord. So don't go through looking for 5/7 chords, find one and think, oh, it's not in second inversion, and dismiss it, because if it's in 6/5 position, then you've got your answer for the second feature. So it's a good idea to just make sure you have actually looked at all three of the features you've got to find, in case you sort of bump into one while searching for a different one. So anyway, if you want to give that a go for looking for 5/7 chords, you can go and do that now, or keep listening. Okay, so a second inversion 5/7 chord. Now, in terms of sort of tips, it does depend on the key. So we're going to have to work out what key we're in order to know what our 5/7 chord is, what chord 5 is in whichever key we're in. But because it's a 7th chord, we know that it's going to be a chord with 4 notes. So that helps us narrow it down a little bit. I suppose some other more tenuous things are the fact that it's quite likely to be followed by a tonic chord. What else? Not a lot. I mean, it's a key chord. It's going to happen quite a lot, but the fact that it's in second inversion does make it less stable. So it's not as common as just having a 5/7 chord in root position. And so you just need to get into your head that you're looking for second inversion. For the next feature, it doesn't say what the inversion is. It just says 6/5 position. So that's your figured bass. So you need to know for the exam your figured bass off by heart, because it's quite possible that they will write in figured bass, and if they need you to find 2 chords that are in different inversions, as you've got here, one of them it says what the inversion is, it's second inversion, but the other one doesn't, and it tells you the figured bass instead, so you have to work it out. So from your knowledge of figured bass, pause it if you want to have a think, but if not, I'm going to tell you. So with figured bass, if you've got a 7th chord in root position, you just have the 7. If you're in first inversion, it's 6/5. If you're in second inversion, it's 4/3, and third inversion, which would have the 7th note in the bass, it's 4/2. So the second feature you're trying to find is the same as the above in that it depends on the key, and it's a chord with 4 notes, but this one's in first inversion rather than second inversion. So we are going to scan. We're going to focus on finding the second inversion chord first of all, but bearing in mind that if we come across one in first inversion, then we've got our answer. Okay, so scanning through, we know that we were in G minor at bar 88, but we don't know what key we're in at the beginning of the trio. We've got to look from the start for all of these features, so we do need to work out the key. Now again, that's the sort of knowledge that you should ideally know going into the exam. You should know Okay, the minuet starts in D major, but the trio starts in whatever key, and so we're going to look at the key signature. We previously said in 88, we talked about the fact that we had 2 flats, but because of the F sharp, the raised 7th, that we were in the relative minor of G minor. So if we look at the beginning of the trio, we haven't got F sharps, we haven't got any added accidentals. So this entire opening passage here, doesn't have added accidentals, but we've got our 2 flats in the key signature. The first notes of the melody, so we don't have anything in the bass. The first notes in the melody are moving from a D to an F. And in B major, the tonic triad, the tonic chord, is B flat, D, F. So those are notes of the tonic chord. And then the first notes that come in are B flats. So it's safe to assume that we are in B flat major. So that's going to help us. So in B flat major, we are looking for a chord 5 with a 7th note in second inversion. That was the first one it was asking us to find. So in B flat major, a chord 5 is F, B flat, C, D, E, F. That's chord 5. So it's F, A, C, and then it's got the 7th on the top, the E flat. And in second inversion, it's not going to have F in the bass, it's not going to have A in the bass, it's going to have a C in the bass. And so straight away, what have we got here? If I'm scanning for C's in the bass, I've hit it immediately, which is good. That's nice and easy. We've got a C. So we need to check the rest of the chord, of course. I'm going to ignore the viola, too difficult. What notes have we got? So we've got some double stopping in the violin 2 part. And that's an A and an E flat. So all we need to do is find an F, and we've got the notes we're looking for, F, A, C, E flat. And lo and behold, we've got our Fs on the first beat of the bar. So it is an F chord with the 7th, but it's in second inversion because the C is in the bass. So that was a nice one. We found it straight away. We don't need to look here because we found it. I'm happy with that. Okay, so the next one we're going through, and as we know, we are looking for a 5/7 chord in 6/5 position. So go and find that if you want to give it a try. If you want to stay with me, here is your tip that we've just talked about before, obviously. So similar thing, we need to work out the key. We then need to work out what notes are in chord 5, what the 7th note would be as well, and then we need to scan for a chord with 4 notes in it, and then double check that we have got the correct note in the bass. So first inversion. So if we were in B flat major, so what we were just looking at right at the start, rather than having the C in the bass, so it would be an F7 chord, but with C in the bass, because it's first inversion, it would have an A in the bass. But we don't know if we're going to find the answer. We don't know if we're going to find this feature in a section that is in B flat major. We just don't know, so we need to scan. Right, okay, so we need to start at the beginning, and we need to establish what key we are in, as we've just said, because chord 5 depends on the key. And we had already worked out that we'd started in B flat, and that we had come across straight away our C in the bass, which was a chord 5 in B flat, which is F, A, C, E flat in second inversion. So that's why the C is in the bass. So we know that we've got to carry on, and at present, if we are in B flat and we're looking for a chord 5, it's still the same chord we're looking for, F, A, C, E flat, so a 4-note chord, but we're now looking for 6/5 position or first inversion. So if that chord, F, A, C, E flat, is in first inversion, the note in the bass we're looking for is an A. Okay, so in order to find an A, we're going to be looking at the bottom space of the bass clef stave or the top line, and we're going to scan until such point as we think we're no longer in B flat. So I'm going to go along here, F, 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 B flat, can't speak, F, B flat, F, B flat, F, B flat. So it's clearly going, it's doing lots of little perfect cadences, isn't it? It's going 5/1, 5/1, 5/1. Yes, we're in the classical period. Thank you, Haydn, we know. Right, stop. At this point, I have to immediately be on my guard because I don't know if I'm in B flat major anymore, because, I hope you know the answer to this, I can see added accidentals. I've got F sharps and I've got E naturals. So something is definitely going on. And I'm not really surprised because we're coming to the end of the section, so it's quite likely there's been some sort of modulation. Right, so for this, I'm going to have to go really, really carefully and look at all these chords. Now, generally speaking, if you've got music where you have, especially in 3, because this is quite a sort of distinctive stylistic thing that Haydn would do, especially in 3, on beat 3, so that's where this F sharp is here, on beat 3, if you've got a chord and then it's followed by a chord on beat 1 of the following bar, and then you've got a rest, it's quite likely that those 2 chords are 5-1. And as I've said, it looks as if we're moving through keys, so it's not so much a sort of a big modulation, it's more just a tonicization of a different key. And so we've got this little pattern. We've been going F, B flat, F, B flat, F, B flat, as I've just said, and now it's different. It's 2 different notes. Followed, there's a rest, and then we've got again on beat 3 moving to beat 1, and then beat 3 moving to beat 1. So I would bet money that these are 5-1 chords. That's likely. What we obviously need to do is work out what the key is and double check they are 5-1s. And if they are chord 5s, are they 7th chords, and are they in first inversion? Okay, so let's look at the first one. We need to examine what notes we've got in this chord so we know what it is. Now, I'm going to ignore the viola for now because it's tricky, it's a different clef. I'm going to look at the violin 2 part, which is nice. So that's doing double stopping. Or it might, I suppose, if you had more than one violinist playing the part, you could take a part each, depending on how you were splitting it and how big your orchestra was. So it's playing a D and an A, so that's a nice open fifth. And we've got an F sharp in the bass. So immediately, if I hear Ds and As and F sharps, my brain thinks, okay, well, that's a D chord. Above it, we've got quavers that are moving, and we're on the 3rd beat of the bar. And we've got B flats moving to, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. B flats moving to A's. So I'm probably going to take those B flats with a pinch of salt. So the B flats in the violin 1 section and in the bassoon. And be careful with that. This is not the flute. Don't misread it, especially because it begins with F. F, G, so faggot, bassoon, not FL, flute. And it's in the bass clef. If you remember, you should know this from sort of contextual knowledge. The trio opens with just the oboe and bassoon. And the strings underneath. It's written very much like a little string quartet with the wind instruments over the top. And then the flute comes in at bar 64, the B section, which we identified earlier. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to assume those B flats are passing notes because they're moving downwards by step onto the A's, and we know that we've got strong crotchet A's with an open 5th chord underneath in the violin 2 part, and we've got an F sharp in the bass. So that is D, F sharp, A. Let's look at the next chord. So the next bar, we've got a G in the bass. We've got a D and a B in the violin 2 part. Good old, it's always the seconds, isn't it? It was the second oboes, and now it's the second violins. Don't underestimate the seconds. They might not be quite as good players as the firsts, which is why they've been shoved down onto the second desk, but they are useful. And this is the first beat of the bar, so we would expect to not have a passing note on the first beat, and that the note, the first quaver that we have on beat 1 is part of the chord. It's a harmonic note. And so we've got G's, D's, B's, B's, G's. So that is a G major chord. So we have gone D major, G major. So that is a 5-1. And it's a 5-1 in G. Hold on, why am I saying G major? These are B flats. You see? I know you think that I'm a genius, but I am human. I make mistakes. So it's still the same thing though. It's still 5-1 in G. It's just G minor. I just forgot to say the minor, sorry. Okay, and that makes sense because G minor is the relative minor, and we know we've gone to G minor later on when we've had F sharps at that ridiculous bar that we had to analyse, bar 88. Okay, so that is a perfect cadence in G minor, so we've got a chord 5. Right, so 2 things we need to check with this chord with the F sharp and the bass. Does it have a 7th? The one note that I didn't look at because I was being lazy was the viola note. and it is a C. So that is our 7. So it is a chord 5-7. Now we need to think about the inversion. So a D major chord with a 7. So D, F sharp, A, C. First inversion, it's not D in the bass, it's F sharp in the bass. So we have found our answer. So that is bar 61, beat 3. I'm not going to look any further. It's possible that some of these guys, they might be 7th chords or not. I don't have time to look. I'm not going to worry about it because I found one. That is definitely correct. Bar 61, beat 3. Don't need to look at this page because we've got one. Okay, so final one, a perfect cadence in C minor. Well, this is lovely because it's telling us what key. It's not just saying a perfect cadence, although, I mean, presumably we'll be inundated with them, but it's telling us that it wants it in C minor. So if you think you can go and work that out yourself, go and have a try. If you want some tips, just stay listening for a bit. So C minor, the chords in a perfect cadence are going to be a G chord followed by a C minor chord. So we actually know exactly what notes we're looking for, but we don't know whether those chords are going to be in inversions. So we can't just scan the bass. So that's quite a lot to look for. So to narrow it down, what I would suggest is that you establish a section that is in C minor. And in order to establish a key, as we know, we look at the key signature and we look at added accidentals and we find out what key we're in for a particular section. And then you should find there are lots of perfect cadences because obviously this is classical harmony. And in order to confirm any key, you're going to have lots of perfect cadences. Now, where I think you might struggle is establishing what flats or sharps or naturals, what are the accidentals in C minor. So if you want me to talk you through that before you go and have a look on your own, then stay listening. If not, go and have a look. So C minor, if you were just given a minor key like that, here you go, here's C minor. In order to work out the notes that are going to be played, the accidentals, you have to go to its relative major. So C minor, you go up a minor third. The relative major of C minor is E flat major. And that makes sense because we know we've been in B flat major, and E flat major is one step along anti-clockwise on the left hand side of the circle of fifths. So rather than being a 2 flat key, which is B flat major, it's a 3 flat key, E flat major. So it has B flats, E flats and A flats. So if you were in a piece of music that was in E flat all the way through, which obviously this isn't, but if you were, you would have 3 flats in the key signature. And similarly, if you were then in a piece of music that was in the relative minor, which is C minor, you would have that key signature. Now, we're not going to have that key signature because we're not in E flat, but we know that those are the notes we would expect in the C minor scale. So write out your scale like you would always do, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So we've just said that because it's the relative minor to E flat major, it has 3 flats. E flat major is a 3 flat key. So we have to flatten our E, flatten our A, and flatten our B going up. So it's C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. However, there is one more thing you need to do when you are in a minor key with a minor scale. And if you know what that is, well done. If you need a reminder, that's fine. You have to sharpen the 7th. And that's what gives minor keys those sort of leading. I love the sound of the sharpened 7th in a minor key, moving upwards at minor scale, moving up to the tonic, moving up to the octave. It's raised, and you hear that gap. Da 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 da. That's the 6th degree. Da, that's the 7th. Da da da. It's that nice raised tone. So a B flat is being raised or being sharpened. I know you don't like B's being sharpened, Harry, because it makes them B sharps or C's, and we don't like that. But actually, if you sharpen a B flat, you move up by a semitone, you just get a B natural. So in order to identify a section of music that is in C minor, And it's not, the whole piece, so you can't rely on the key signature. But you are looking for a piece of music that is going to have lots of C's in it, presumably, hopefully, if it's stable harmony. But it's going to have E flats, A flats, and B naturals. So we are going to be looking on our score for added A flats, because they aren't in the key signature. Our E flats are staying as they are, because E is flattened in the key signature already for us. But a B is flattened in the key signature, and we don't want that because we want to be natural. So we're looking for naturalized Bs on the score. So we're scanning for a section where you have added A flats and naturalized Bs. So if you want to go and have a look yourself and then look for a perfect cadence, if not, I will talk you through it. Right, we know that at the start of the trio, we are in B flat major because we've looked at that bit a lot. And then we know that we briefly moved key here. We'd gone into G minor a bit. I'm not seeing A flats and B naturals, so I'm not going to stress about that. I'm going to start looking from this section. And hooray, straight away, A flats, boom. Straight away, B naturals, boom. Hooray. So I think this section is in C minor. So it's in the subdominant minor. And if you knew it, if you know it off by heart, you would sort of hear in your head or recognise that this bit is minor. It's moved from the trio starts in a major key, B flat major, and it moves to a minor key. And it sounds like quite a shift because it's the subdominant minor. So actually, if you think of it from B flat, it's actually the second degree of the scale. And we call that the supertonic minor. Anyway, you don't need to know that. Don't know why I'm telling you that. I don't want to complicate things. Anyway, yeah, it's quite a startling shift. So we're looking for C's underneath. Now look at this beauty. Violin 2 part. I mean, do not underestimate the second desk. We've had the second oboes helping us out. We've had the second violins helping us out, even though they're possibly, arguably, slightly less good musicians, and that's why they've been moved to the second part. They are very important for our harmony, and they are very useful, so don't forget about them. We have got our leading note moving to our tonic. We have got a B natural moving to a C. Now I'm looking for a chord 5, which is a G chord, followed by a chord 1, so a perfect cadence in C minor. So the notes in the first chord that I'm looking for are G, B natural, D, and possibly an F, possibly a 7th. It doesn't say that, it just says a perfect cadence, so it could be a 5, 7, 1. And then I'm looking for a chord that is C, E flat, G, the C minor chord. And I think I've got it straight away. If we look at this chord here where we've got the B natural underneath, so it's obviously not a G chord in root position, but it might be in first inversion. We need to check out what the other notes are. Now above it, the violin 1 part is playing quavers which look like they're passing notes, and we're on beat 3, so it's not, even though it's in terms of how this is written rhythmically, beat 3 is quite important because we've got lots of rests on beat 2 and then beat 3 is a chord, but it's not as important as chord 1, so it's quite likely that we've got passing notes. So these are not harmonic notes. The fact that the violin 1 is playing an E flat, as is the bassoon, it does move on to a D. You can see that there. Oboe 2, look at that, it's the second again, is playing a G, the flute's playing a G. So we've got G, B, D, so that is a G chord. Now, oboe 1 is playing an F, which is our 7th. So the oboes between them are playing the interval of a 7th, which is going to sound lovely. It's going to give a really nice dissonance, which then is going to resolve. Yes, the F falls to the E flat in the oboe part in the next bar. So that's a lovely example of harmony. So that's a chord 5 in first inversion with a 7. Let's hope that this is definitely a chord 1. It should be. We've got our C in the bass part, the lowest part, which is the violin 2 here, because obviously the violas and the cellos are not written in this bit. Violin 1 is playing a C, bassoon is playing a C, oboe 2 is playing a C, flute, I can't see that on my score because it's too small. It's playing an E flat. Yeah, we have definitely got a C minor chord. And what's also really cementing the fact that we are in C is that look at this movement, this arpeggiatic movement. The oboe 2 and the violin 1 are playing the notes of the C minor arpeggio, C, E flat, G, C, E flat, and then it moves down to a D because then it goes off and does something stepwise. Yeah, so we've got one. Perfect cadence in C minor. And I bet in this section, unless it changes out of C minor, I bet we've got more. If you scan along, yeah, look, we've got G down here, B, and yeah, there's a C. I'm not even going to spend time looking at that. I just know that that will be a perfect cadence as well. So you've got different options for this answer. It's doing the same thing. And that's what we expect because we know that classical harmony uses perfect cadences to stabilise the harmony. So your answer could be bar 66, beat 3 to bar 67, beat 1. Remember, you've got to say both bars. Or you could say 72, 3, 4, 74, beat 3 to 75, beat 1. Don't need this slide. I've got 2. I'm happy. Okay, so these are our answers. So going back to the first one, which section starts at bar 64.3? So it was the B section of the trio. State in full the key at bar 88. That was the hilarious bar that only had F sharps in it, but we had our B flat and E flat in the key signature. So we knew that our F sharp were the sharp and seventh of G minor, which is the relative minor, so that makes sense. The second inversion 5/7 chord was bar 56, which was the one right at the start of the trio. The question that I changed, the feature that was actually different on the original sheet, so a 5/7 chord in 6/5 position, which is the same as first inversion, that was in bar 61 B3. That was the G sharp moving to the, sorry, the F sharp moving to the G. It was in G minor. It was tonicized G minor briefly. And the perfect cadence in C minor, so the one that she's written down is 74 beat 3 to 75, but you can also have, don't know why she's disregarded my one, you can also have bar 66 beat 3 to bar 67 beat 1. So 2 options, but you only need to put 1 down. And that is the end of question 16.